Phoenix finished the 2024 calendar year as one of the top underachievers in the NBA. The Suns are 15-17 after a loss to the Ja Morantless Memphis Grizzlies. The offense is pretty good, just inside the top 10. The defense is very, very bad. Bottom third in the NBA. There have been injuries, but Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, they've all played at least 22 games this season. Mike Budenholzer said this week that these are not easy times, but we'll find a way through it together. So I'll put it that way, Rachel. Do you think there's a way out of this malaise for the Phoenix Suns?
I mean, this whole roster, they definitely made some improvements this summer, but the whole construction of everything required such a high wire trapeze act of health since they brought Bradley Beal in that was unreasonable to expect and has not happened, right? So I just think that until you address the fundamental problem, you are not, no matter how much you change coaches, yes, they need to they should be a way better team defensively than they are. That's just effort. And I don't understand what's happening there with that because they do have players who really care. Devin Booker cares, man. We watched him this summer in the Olympics, and Steve Kerr made the extra point after they won the gold medal saying, I haven't heard anyone mention Devin Booker. And let me tell you all the dirty work, all the defensive, all the things besides just knocking in every basket that he does. We know what kind of player he is. I mean, he is elite and he cares. Kevin Durant really cares. In fact, you could argue that publicly, as well as we have gotten to know Kevin Durant, almost all he cares about is basketball. He really, really cares. So I don't know why the defense collectively hasn't been able to show more effort. But I just think with this roster, there is a limit, a cap in this Western Conference on how far they can go with the health of the players who break down the way that they do. And, it's not epic the way it was maybe a season or two ago, but it's enough. I mean, it's enough that you don't normally have all three of those guys on the floor.
I would push back on, they all care because.
You don't think they do?
I mean, I look.
Man.
I believe, look.
My shot-o-meter's high. Go ahead.
No, I mean, look, they obviously care. They want to win. And I love that Kevin Durant recently is, putting the onus on him, like taking the accountability, say, hey, I need to be better. But the eyeball test and the statistics are pointing to some metrics that show that effort is a big time problem. When you don't have effort,
no, I agree.
I think there's a correlation there, right? Like effort and care are to me are two of the same thing. When I watch Phoenix and I studied them a little bit, they're just kind of soft, like they're a jump shooting team that doesn't offensive rebound. They routinely get their teeth kicked in the paint. They don't generate a lot of turnovers. They don't rank high in some of those aforementioned effort categories like deflections, shots contested. I said and I wrote in our preview issue before the year that Jusuf Nurkic is not a fit with this team. Like I just believe that. He's not a Mike Budenholzer guy anyway, and he's not the rim protector that this team needs. So you're just not winning anything with a bad defense and no rim protection. And that's what they are right now. Now, look, when Durant plays, they're actually pretty good. They're 14-8 in the games he's played this season. And maybe this time next week we're having a different conversation because they have a soft schedule coming up. They've got some very winnable games over the next week to 10 days. But they got to turn this thing around quickly and they got to show more effort. That is the biggest piece of this puzzle is more effort. I think that may only lead to a slightly higher ceiling because I don't think you win the playoffs with a mediocre defense and no rim protection. But so far, it's been an effort issue when Phoenix is losing some of these games.
Yeah, I mean, that was my point, though, is that it's clearly effort. And so I know that some of the big stars on this team really care about how they're doing. And so I don't understand why it's not translating into that effort, because of course it is. I mean, so much of a defensive character of a team is just about want to, right? It's about effort. And again, I'm going to go back to a little bit of the coaching change, not because I don't think Coach Bud is good. Coach Bud is really good. But you had a guy whose specialty was defense last year in Frank Vogel, and you threw him out because somehow a new coach was going to fix this. Like, I just think you fundamentally have to look at the roster. None of us, I don't think, like Nurkic coming in. And by the way, that's not a knock on him either. I just don't think he's the right fit there. that was going to be the answer for them. And I think the feeling among people in Phoenix was like, oh, the offensive pyrotechnics are going to be so fantastic with Beal, KD, and Booker that we can get away with it. And they can't, basically. So I don't know what they're going to do there, because that situation is not going to improve. So I just think that whether it's making more of an effort, whether it is focusing on things like turnover, sloppy play, whether it's Kevin Durant being more healthy, because you're right, when he's in the game and when he's in there, they do well. I just, for a team with that high expectations, given who is on their roster, I don't know if this group is going to be a group that ever does well in the playoffs. And that begs the question, Kevin Durant's never going to have more value than he does right now. You can't trade Bradley Beal, which is a decision that is just, mind boggling that they got themselves into. You never want to trade Devin Booker. So do you look at Kevin Durant and say, we want to make a move there? When do you think is the right time to pull that ripcord? Never? This summer? Now? What do you think?
I would have, at least the earliest it would be is the off season. And if they go into this off season coming off another disappointing first round exit or worse, there has to be kind of a come to Jesus moment for Matt Ishbia and that front office. Like I respect what Matt Ishbia came in trying to do, right? Like he wasn't going to let the front office be constrained financially in the same way they were under Robert Sarver. So I respect that. I like an owner coming in saying, hey, I'm going to spend, and as he told me a year and a half ago, and others, I'm sure, like the money, like the success will follow, right? Like it'll follow the spending there. It's not how it works in the NBA. Like you got to build a certain way, and just assembling, your version of basketball Voltron, to borrow from Kobe from years ago. Like it's not going to yield championship level success. Like you've got to take your lumps along the way. All these championship teams of recent years have gone through stuff. Denver went through a lot. Boston went through a lot. You've got to take those lumps, and there's not enough time for this Suns team to go through all that. They're going to have so much. They already had, the turnover from the last couple of years, like the roster shakeups. Like you're just not able to develop the kind of continuity outside of your top three guys and a couple others maybe that you ultimately need. So I think they're in a real pickle here. I mean, the fact that the Suns were top half of the NBA in defense last year was a coaching act of wizardry that Frank Vogel should put at the top of his resume whenever he applies for another job. Like, this was not a good defensive team last year. They were ranked 13th in the NBA. This year, they're exactly where they probably should be, which is the bottom third of the NBA. So
you think you wouldn't have wanted to change the coach?
I don't get that. I don't get that. Now, I mean
again, and that's not a knock on Bud. Bud should be a head coach, and he should be a head coach somewhere. I just don't think you fire the guy who had only done good things with a mangled roster that you gave him. And, Matt Ishbia has been a good owner in this league since he walked in the door. He is willing to spend the money. He's replacing a guy in Robert Sarver who was not a good owner, just unimpeachably bad. So I just think that he has been an asset to the NBA. What he's done with the local television, I think, is brilliant, frankly, and I don't know why more teams don't do that. The $2 hot dogs, like all the things that he's come up with in terms of being an owner and a part of that community has been super impressive to me. But you are absolutely right. He had new owner syndrome, which we see in the NBA almost every time. These guys are so smart. To make enough money to buy an NBA team, you have to be so smart. And the fact that they don't understand that this has happened over and over and over and over again. You cannot walk in the door as a new owner, wave your magic money wand, and buy a championship team in 3 months. It doesn't work that way. And that was what kind of tried to happen here, and it hasn't worked.
No, it's happened successfully a couple of times over the last 25 years. But those times were, first of all, different times in terms of the landscape of the NBA. And they also involved generational talents, right, in their prime. In the case of Boston, getting Garnett to go with Pierce and Ray Allen and like pieces that fit. LeBron goes to Miami. That worked out. Like getting.
That wasn't new ownership though.
Yeah, no, yeah. But getting three scorers, basically.
Yeah. Yes.
Two of them in their 30s.
Yeah.
It just didn't track to me then, and doesn't track to me right now. Like, that team has a low ceiling. That can be a playoff team every year, but because of its defensive deficiencies, because of the rim protection, you're going to get beat in the first round every single time. Like, can you imagine, like, if they played Oklahoma City in the first round, they would get boat run in a series like that. Like, that would be catastrophic for them. I don't. You got to like have some recognition there about where this team is and how far it can ultimately go.